Mere conservatism.
All right, testing 1, 2, 3.
I think the proper phrase is you ready?
I am ready. Are you ready?
Is you ready?
Okay. David Perry is ready. Cleve Walker is ready. Are you ready for another edition of Mere Conservatism? David, my man, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Cleve.
Well, let's start off with, we were talking about Davos, Switzerland.
Yeah.
The big...
Have you ever been to Switzerland?
I have not. I love the pictures I've seen.
It's beautiful.
Isn't it?
I have been to Switzerland a few times. And
You have?
I have, and it is a beautiful, beautiful place.
Oh, man, I envy you. It's glorious. But this little stuff going on down there now, which goes on there regularly, is really very interesting on a lot of levels to me.
Yeah, it's the largest collection of Bond villains in the world.
And that's who they are to me.
They really are, especially
Let's
Klaus
get
Schwab.
together and take over the world.
That's basically what they're saying. I mean, hearing them talk, it sounds like a Bond script. It really does.
And some of them sound, because of their accent, sound like Bond villains.
Absolutely.
The biggest Bond villain down there, though, is a good old Southern boy, Al Gore.
Oh, yeah.
He went off down there. He went on a tirade about climate change.
Yeah, because climate change is a big topic of discussion at the World Economic Forum because climate change is the excuse and the vehicle to radically shape economics in the
other words,
world.
It's the big reset for the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
The Democrat had a big reset for the U.S.
It's simply a vehicle. That's really people need to understand that the global warming thing, no matter what the issue is, meteorologically, that's a great word for me. I should use that one more often. No matter what the real issue is with climate change, the real crux of it, the important part of it, to these people is that it's an excuse to reorder the world.
There you go, and redistribute the wealth of the nation.
And so let me just say, if climate change is really a problem, an actual solution is not of interest to these people. What is of interest is using that to do what they've already wanted to do in the first place.
Now, I will say this, even among the hoity-toity, even among the elite, there are some true believers in climate change. I really believe that. I don't believe that's true for the majority. I believe that there are powers who are using this myth to accomplish what you're saying. But I do believe there are those who actually believe that man is destroying the planet via man-made carbon emissions. So I want to just toss it out there. There are some true believers.
There's still people talking about overpopulation of the planet.
And they believe that.
And there are people complaining about they really have an issue with, especially the third world, having so many babies because, here in the first world in America, our birth rates are actually dropping. And in Europe, they're dropping.
Well, that's why we need all those new immigrants, according to Schumer. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, but they want to export abortion and birth control. And I wouldn't put it past them because they're Bond villains. Other kinds of nefarious population controls in some of these places because they think that it's killing the planet, or at least that's their excuse to exert their power over people.
And I'm going to say this, and this sounds awful, and I don't like saying it, but the people that you describe don't care how many lives are lost as long as it brings about the goals that they have in mind. In other words, if it's necessary for lives to be lost to achieve this strange equity and balance, they think
and
the planet,
save the planet.
It's important. I mean, the end justifies the means in their minds. So, Davos, you were talking about something else that went on.
Oh, well, I happened to notice, I saw like a quick clip of something somebody was saying there. These people are elites, meaning they're the smartest people in the world, the richest people in the world, and they are smart, like most of them, and they are very wealthy. But they're also elitists, which means they actually think that because they're very smart, that they should rule everybody else.
They know better for everybody, yes.
I found this really interesting. They were discussing an invention that they were working on called diminished reality glasses. Have you heard of this?
I don't think I have. Diminished reality
glasses. This struck me as very, very strange of something that they were working on, as something that they wanted. Basically, what diminished reality is that it takes things out of reality. Mm-hmm. So normally you talk about enhancing reality. Mm-hmm. People want to enhance it, experience it more, maybe even virtual reality, but diminished reality. Put on these glasses and all of a sudden you don't see trash on the street. That's what they specifically mentioned.
Oh.
You may not even see other people around you. It removes things that you do not want to see.
It creates an illusion of a more cleaner, orderly situation.
Or, I mean, I don't know. All it said was it takes away things you don't want to see. I guess it could be anything. And my first reaction to that was because they mentioned trash. You don't want to see trash on the street. Put on these diminished glasses and you don't see it. And I'm thinking, like, why don't we just pick up the trash? You had to invent this.
And they will look at you and say, what part of reality diminished do you not understand? They don't want to deal with reality.
It seemed like a very strange solution to what they're saying.
That's their solution.
But one overarching theme that I think of with that is that reality is really an issue.
Yeah.
To these people, and guess what? It's an issue to a lot of us. Reality is hard. Reality is hard. It's difficult. It's complicated. It's not fun sometimes. It's very challenging at times, and lots of people would really just like to escape, not just for a period of time where they go to a movie or something like that, but all the time, where they live in a virtual world or they live in a diminished world. They're willing to diminish their senses, Cleve, in order to avoid reality. And I just think that is crazy.
I don't know that they're the ones willing to do that. I think they're trying to get the rest of the world to do that because, David, you got to understand, these elite don't live in the same reality that the majority of the world lives in. You and I cannot possibly conceive of what it's like to be on literally a vacation every day. Okay. With servants and people who do your beck and call anytime you want them. We don't know that reality. That's their reality. And that's why progressives in the world and progressives in this country don't mind passing draconian laws that oppress everybody else because they're not going to feel it. They're not going to deal with it. So progressives are the same wherever you want. In Davos, around the world, in America, they know better for everybody else, and they will teach you how to be satisfied with less. That's their philosophy.
Well, that's what they want to do. And I really, it's things like this that make me miss Donald Trump because he didn't have any kind of inclination towards these people.
And
they hated him. He hated them. I mean, he was an elite. Think about it. I mean, he may not be the smartest person in the world, but you know, he may be smarter than average. I think he probably is. And he was very wealthy. But he still wasn't. He wasn't an elitist.
That's right. I agree.
It was a different thing.
And so Davos and people of that ilk hated Donald Trump and the very notion of a president of the free world actually not being a globalist. And that's what he's not. Whatever you want to say about him, he's not a globalist. All right, good stuff, David. And I finally found the answer to something that you didn't tell me last time. I was trying to get you to tell me why the document discovery is going on now with Biden. Why now? I mean, they had it before. Well, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre kind of gave it up on Thursday during a press conference. She said the Biden administration is being transparent about the classified document discoveries, despite knowing about it for months, but they can't talk about it anymore because now a special counsel is involved, and therefore she refers all questions to him, knowing that he cannot answer anything until the investigation is done. You see what I'm saying?
So you're saying that we have effectively moved this issue completely off the front burner. It's all the way in the back. It's happening behind the scenes, and nobody can talk about it.
They have done it. The House, whatever investigation they do, they get the same answer. We cannot divulge the details of the special counsel investigation. If you got any questions, ask them.
It's funny, Cleve, because you think, and I did immediately when the special counsel option came up. Oh, we're going to get to the bottom of this, and we're going to blow the lid off this thing with a special counsel, right?
Right.
Or not. This is actually their way of closing the lid on it.
It's the ultimate cover-up.
That's kind of amazing.
It's the ultimate cover-up, and we didn't see it coming, but it's the only reason. Now, for some reason, they had to release it. I don't know if somebody told them, hey, we can't sit on this. We got to release this. And somebody came up with the great idea, yeah, let's do it. Let's get a special counsel on it. And from that point forward, Pierre or whatever his name is says, I can't divulge any information.
And the whole thing's going to fade into the background.
And with the help of the media.
It is, Cleve, they have used the system to perfection. They have figured out how to do it.
They're gaming the system, and now that they're in power, this is why they will try to keep power. Now, one little bit of good out of that is it does take the sting out of anything they're doing to Trump with the special counsel too. They're not going to give a different outcome for Trump. They're just not going to do any outcome for Trump. And so for that, there's a little bit.
Yeah, this was a huge issue until everybody sees that Democrats did it, and so now it's nobody's issue.
And in all actuality, and I think deep down inside, even they know this. What Biden has done is worse.
Oh, of course.
Than what Trump, anything he has done with this, especially because, again, as a vice president, he had no rights to any of these materials coming to his private quarters. Mm-hmm. And yet, here we are. So I just wanted to throw that at you. I finally understand that particular thing they did.
Thanks for sharing.
By the way, getting back to Davos 1 second, one good thing about Davos is they will solve the problem of climate change. A speaker at the World Economic Forum there said he's calling on 1 billion people to stop eating meat. He said if 1 billion people stop eating meat, the carbon footprint is way, way down. And he said he was inspired by this guy's a wealthy guy, by the way. He was inspired by his 24-year-old daughter who asked him how he could advocate for zero carbon value chains and still eat meat products. He said, I thought about that, so I'll stop it. I don't eat meat. And if 1 billion people follow my example, if you give up your hot dogs, David, we can save the world.
Does that count as meat?
Yeah, I'm afraid
technically. Yeah, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna give up meat. I'm not gonna do it.
What's that about?
I'm not gonna eat bugs. I'm not gonna give up meat because it's good.
Yeah,
and it's good for you.
Yeah. Vegans want to rule the world. And
vegans are different than vegetarians.
Right. Right. Not talking about vegetarians, I'm talking about vegans. Many of them, not all of them. This guy has become one. I hear people say all the time, and you brought this out before too, the progressives are not the people that a lot of people on our side think they are. In other words, their mantra is live and let live. And they look down on us because we seem to want to impose our values. When all the time they're the ones that say, live and live my way. Mm-hmm. Basically, they're the ones doing that.
That's right.
I'm not telling them they have to carry guns. They're telling me I can't carry them. So I wish our side would understand there is no live and let live in this debate. This is not what this is about.
No. And that's why these people are not liberals. You might notice that, I don't know about you, Cleve, but I don't use liberals that much anymore. I mean, and obviously it still has the same connotation.
I have noticed that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what people mean when they say liberals, but it's much more. It means much more when you say leftists, because they're not liberal. They're not a liberal is. In your brain, it should mean that it's a very permissive kind of individual.
Right. They want less restrictions.
And that's a problem in its own way, and for a lot of reasons. But these are people that want control. I mean, these are totalitarians. These are totalitarian leftists. It's a different thing than liberals.
True liberals, the classic liberals, want less restrictions. Mm-hmm. Totalitarians or progressives want more. Mm-hmm. They just want it to be on everybody else but them. Bill Maher is a liberal, but he has come out with many conclusions and statements that are closer to what we're saying, especially about the cancel culture, than the leftists and the progressives are, because he's a classic liberal.
Yeah. Now, again, liberals have their own issues because like a liberal So, somebody like Bill Maher, take him as like an archetype. Obviously, there's all different types of people,
sure.
but they're typically going to be very anti-religion because they're going to be very, very permissive and anything goes and kind of do what you want. Any kind of religion clamps down. But see, that's why a liberal isn't a leftist, because these leftists, they have a religion. This leftism, this adherence to the global warming agenda, it has all the hallmarks of a religion that is controlling, down to the way, even the language you speak when it comes to this transgender issue, the climate change issue, all this stuff. It is a religion at this point. You have to say the right things. You have to do the right things. That's what it is.
In all fairness, though, I will say this. The liberals made the perfect stepping stone for progressives to come into power. Progressives usurped the liberal party of the Democrats to make it a progressive leftist communist party. That was not the original intent. Liberalism, it's stupid in a lot of ways, but progressivism is heavy-handed.
Well, what happens is liberalism and liberals, it's more of an ideal.
Yeah, right.
It's more of the free love, do what you want, everybody, just kind of hippie kind of thing. What the leftists understand is that to do that, to supposedly move in that direction, you have to do something about the people that are getting in the way of that happening. That's what socialism is. I've heard it said that Christians go to heaven, socialists go to communism.
Okay.
That's why they can say that real communism has never been tried, because in a way that's correct, because you never get there. Yeah. You stall out at socialism, because the socialism part of the progression is where you have to solve all the problems that were created by the capitalists or whoever. You have to get rid of the people who are resisting, who are getting in the way, who are oppressive. You have to tear down all the institutions and all the structures that support the old way. That's what socialism is. And the trick is, Cleve, it never actually ends.
No.
You never actually get to the utopia, because there's always new people that need to be liquidated.
Well, not only that, but problems and crises are the things that put them in power in the first place. So therefore, they have to keep people on the edge of insecurity to maintain that power. They can't have a satisfied populace. They have to have a frightened populace.
And that's why you have a new 5-year plan from Mao every couple
time.
of years.
And there's this, and this is the sad part about it. It's saying this, it almost makes me want to cry, to tell you the truth. That's why progressivism cannot allow an America to exist. An America, as it was originally constituted, under the ideals we had, we were the antithesis of progressivism. Capitalism is the antithesis of progressivism. And the worst thing in the eyes of our progressive elite here in America is the U.S. Constitution. They hate it.
Well, and it's important to mention too. You don't serve capitalism.
No, right.
It's not what you do.
I know.
Capitalism actually serves you.
It's a tool.
Here's what's important is freedom and liberty.
Yeah.
If you're going to have freedom and liberty, the economic system of capitalism serves that.
Right.
Because at the core of capitalism is you own things.
Thank you.
It's private property, including yourself.
Right.
That's why there was a debate this week with some folks talking about how Jesus was a socialist. This comes up every now and then.
Yeah.
It's icky. It's totally icky because, and here's what some people on the right do, Cleve, and this bothers me too. No, Jesus was a capitalist.
Yeah.
Well, hold on now, because no, he wasn't.
Wrongo.
That's the trap that you fall into if you try to have this discussion on their terms.
Right.
Jesus was neither one of those things. But what we do as Christians is we look at the revelation that God gave us in Scripture, and we see what are the principles there about how we ought to live. And now let's see if we can find a system that best promotes that kind of stuff.
That most closely conforms to
that doesn't mean that capitalism is perfect.
No.
And it doesn't mean that it can't be abused.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that people do wrong things that are engaging in capitalism. That's not what it means. What it means is there are principles and ideals that capitalism better serves than socialism. And
right.
owning your own property is a big thing when it comes to that.
Because one of the Christian priorities is stewardship. God blesses you with what you have, or me what I have, so we will be stewards over that unto him. But if I don't have the right to steward that which has been entrusted to me by God, if that belongs to the government, then there can be no expression of that Christian principle of stewardship.
That's right. And government in a socialist system automatically takes the place of God, because they're the ones that give you the stuff that you have.
Donald Trump is the only president that I can recall ever having said something like that. Ronald Reagan, I think, came close to saying it a few times, but Donald Trump just came out and said, "Government is not God." It's just God.
We don't worship the government in America.
Donald Trump said that, and it's exactly what we're saying. So we're not saying capitalism is perfect. It cannot be perfect because people are not perfect, and therefore it is going to be used improperly. But it's the closest thing to what we can have.
And we may have gone a little too far on the right side of politics in this country, calling everything we didn't like socialism. I think that's possible. You know, the big talking point was that Obamacare was socialism and all that stuff, which is somewhat correct in that it is trending in that direction.
But it was made to trend in that direction.
I mean, and that's true. But the problem with saying that is now people think that government services equals socialism. A lot of people think that. People on the left and right think that any time the government does anything, it's socialism. That's not correct. That's not true. And we have sort of fed into that lie. And so people on the left can say, "Oh, you don't like socialism. I guess you don't like roads." Stupid firefighters, stuff like that. It's dumb. It's dumb, but you feed into that when you label everything socialism. I know we got a little bit off on a tangent there, but
that's what mere conservatism is all about. But my main problem with government is when government tells me how to use my own money, or tells me that I don't use my money correctly, so they need to take it because I'm not going to be fair. That leads to socialism and eventually to communism. And so that's where we're at right now, or at least this is where the people in power want to take us. One quick thing. This is Sanctity of Human Life Month, January. And the FBI is now offering a $25,000 reward, David, for info related to a string of attacks on pro-life pregnancy centers. The FBI said it'll pay out for info leading to the identification and arrest and conviction of any suspects involved in those crimes. Now, the problem is that comes just a few days after a network of pro-life pregnancy centers in New York hired private investigators to probe a firebomb attack against their facility after waiting and getting an inadequate response from the FBI.
I was going to say, it's the first time I've heard the FBI say anything about
They were embarrassed by it. They're being pressured by it. These folks had to hire their own investigators to look because nothing has happened. Back in the summer, nothing has happened. And I only bring that up because we're going to see more such attacks. And I pray daily for our pregnancy care centers and those on that line of business. And I pray they're taking proper security, because we're living in an environment where, unfortunately, not only are more of these things going to happen, but the powers that be in our government, and I don't say this lightly, David, actually encourage it. They actually encourage, for example, Kavanaugh's home being doxxed and his privacy violated. They encouraged that.
They were fine with it.
Yes, they encouraged it. So the same thing for pregnancy care centers, and eventually, mark my word, David, the same thing for churches. And so but it is Sanctity of Human Life Month, so I just want to, if I had a cap, I'd take my hat off and tip it to our pregnancy care centers and those working in that field.
That's a big deal. You know, the right to life is the it's the overarching right that makes anything else matter. I was listening to a podcast this week about a guy or a guy being interviewed who was recently defrocked. He's a Catholic guy. I don't know if you saw. I can't remember his name now, but he got defrocked, and a lot of people think it was because of his pro-life advocacy that he went to a little farther than his bishops wanted him to go. But he made the point that everything that is important to us hinges on the right to life. That's why it's not the only issue that's out there, but it is the issue that makes every other issue matter.
It's the linchpin.
He made the point. Why do we care about people having jobs? Well, it's a quality of life issue. You can't have a quality of life unless you have a life. And that hit home to me, realizing that this was a fundamental base issue. It's absolutely vital that we get this right and that we are advocating for pro-life causes, because this is a travesty in our country.
And I want to tell you something, and this is why it goes back to what you said about capitalism. If we had a capitalistic society and we had prosperity and we had low taxes and we had military superiority and security on our borders, but if we did not have an end to the practice of abortion, we are still a failure. We are still a failure.
That's absolutely right. And let me point this out. Abortion can be a very capitalistic venture.
Sadly, I agree.
This is why we don't serve capitalism and we don't worship capitalism, because you know what? People can make a lot of money.
They are
doing abortions, and they do. They do. You're right. That's why the answer to all of our problems is not capitalism and free markets necessarily. They serve us, not the other way around. They serve our interests and our ideals and the way we know society ought to be, not the other way around.
Good point. On that note, again, it's Sanctity of Human Life Month, January, when we pray for those who are battling for the lives of the unborn. David, folks can catch this entire interview again?
Yeah, check it out on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. Thank you.
And despite how bad we painted some things, the battle is not over with yet, okay? Keep the faith. And join David Perry and me, Cleve Walker, for another edition of Mere Conservatism. Bye-bye.